This video will be talking about adolescent substance use and comorbid mental health issues. The rates of adolescent substance use vary by age and geographical location and country. In the United States, youth involved in the criminal justice system tend to have rates that vary between 30 and 60%. So many young people are using some form of substance. Generally, rates of cannabis use disorder seem to be the highest in youth that are engaged in the criminal justice system. Critically, we want to be understanding the different types of substances that youth are using, whether it be alcohol, cannabis, cocaine, opiates, as they may be used for different reasons and certainly have different effects on behavior, as well as having different reasons why young people become exposed to them and then later addicted to them. So understanding the different types of substance use that kids are using is really important. Critically in youth, broadly, we want to be understanding as well their mental health picture. We know young people that are involved in the criminal justice system have 3 to 4 times the rates of mental health disorder compared to the general population. So whilst this age group broadly has highest rates of substance use and mental health compared to any other age group, youth in the criminal justice system have even higher rates. So it's critical to assess thoroughly mental health as well as substance abuse and their comorbidity and correlations together. Certainly, young people use substances as a way to deal and cope with mental health issues. Common mental health disorders include depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and trauma. Trauma is particularly underassessed in young people, so exposure can come from uh, domestic violence in the home, street violence, as well as other types of exposure to traumatic events. Many young people use substances to cope with traumatic events, and so a good assessment for PTSD is particularly important. Some tools to use could include self-report measures, screening tools to assess for substance use and mental health, but also just general questions. Well, how much do you use? How frequently? When? Who with? Do you know why? Is it when you're stressed or anxious, depressed, or as a way to kind of escape reality? So doing a good assessment and understanding is important. Substance use falls on a spectrum from regular non-problematic use that a lot of teenagers in the United States engage in, right? It's pretty common for someone to have smoked cannabis or used alcohol as a teenager. But as use increases, it can, in frequency and in quantity, it can become into the problematic zone. So starting to affect schoolwork, maybe curfews, maybe parents or others notice some changes in behavior. And then if that persists and continues, people can then develop a substance use disorder where they meet certain medical criteria for having a persistent pattern of use despite it causing problems and despite attempts to manage it. So again, thinking about substance use as from normative to the disorder level and asking questions about where does it fall on the spectrum is also important. The treatment for substance use can vary from prevention work, so early conversations about risk, the pros and cons of using for folks that may not have a substance use disorder yet, can kind of head it off at the pass. Conversation with a parent, a teacher, a trusted adult can be useful to understand patterns and help them understand how substances can develop into problematic and disorder level issues. Once someone has a substance use disorder, they tend to need professional treatment, and treatment does work, it is effective. And treatment comes in the form of EMDR, as well as other types of trauma-informed care. Medication is also a useful tool in young people. So there's treatments for alcohol, opiate use disorder. Youth also benefit from medication treatment for those different problems. There are less options when it comes to treating things like cannabis use or cocaine or methamphetamine, although there are some options that can be tried. But generally, it's a combination of therapy and medication is best. But in addition to that, kids live in a social network, and so we think peer supports are really critical. AA engagement, Narcotics Anonymous, Marijuana's Anonymous can be a really important tool for young people to build those social connections because social life is such a key piece of adolescence and young adulthood that starting to build more stable, sober friends is a really key part of their recovery. The school system can play an important role as well, understanding about substance use, how it shows up in school. There are recovery high schools that are available for kids that have substance use problems that are really interfering with their academics. So those are some other pieces of the puzzle. A critical yet often neglected piece of the puzzle in adolescent and young adult substance use treatment is the parent system. Parents need a lot of support, understanding, they need a lot of education, and they need skills and tools to be able to respond effectively to adolescent substance use. And there are some evidence-based approaches to help parents, including the CRAFT model, which stands for community reinforcement and family training. Parents get one-on-one guidance and support around navigating boundaries and limits, how to respond to addictive behaviors, as well as how to intervene when someone is having a mental health issue. As well as a big piece of helping parents cope and deal with the emotions and the stress and griefs that can come with the challenges that they face in their child. There are also community supports for parents, things like um, Al-Anon is a good option, or Learn to Cope, or some other places where parents can get supports as well. Lastly, the good news is that recovery rates for youth substance use is quite high. As much as 70 to 80% of people can obtain long-term stable recovery. We know there's about 40 million people in the United States in recovery, so that's really good news. It's not all doom and gloom. A lot of people can get well with treatment. We know, though, that relapse rates can be high, and so a good understanding that it's not a one-shot learning curve, that someone might have a slip or a relapse. That doesn't mean everything's gone and lost and over. It just means we have to rethink the treatment plan. Maybe they need a more intensive program, a switch in medication. Maybe they need to go back to a residential program. It doesn't mean that it's not working or it's not effective. Sometimes people need several times when they go into a more intensive treatment program to get a handle on their substance abuse. But relapse rates, while common, do get less and less frequent and less common over time with continued and persistent treatment involvement. And recovery rates, as I mentioned, are really high, and that's a really good story. It's particularly important to start treatment as soon as possible in young people. The earlier you start treatment, the shorter your course of illness. And so it's critical that we intervene early with youth, young people, and teenagers.